Hello, runners, and welcome to another exciting episode of Mr. Rubio Used to Run, the Running Warehouse podcast. I am the co-host, Joe Rubio, and alongside me we have the James Brown of running, the godfather of super shoes, our very own Connor Blaylock.
Joe, I'm feeling good today, but I am not feeling as good as you. You brought out a really nice shirt. I didn't get the memo.
No, you didn't get the memo. The thing is that I have this thing in my head that I don't want to wear the same shirt multiple times on the podcast. I don't think that's fair to the people in YouTube land.
No.
So I went down to Goodwill and I purchased this for $3 along with two other shirts. So I'm good for the next two episodes beyond this.
Is that going to fit in the budget? $3?
Hopefully.
Okay.
Hopefully. Now I'm trying to match your watch.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Okay.
I got the Timex. You got which watch do you have today?
Well, we got a custom on today, but I think maybe I'll follow along your lead and maybe wear a new watch each week.
And apparently people are quite impressed with the shirt because I got many comments around the building.
Yeah.
Shirt looks good because I'm always wearing ratty old T-shirts. So it's it's an upgrade.
Okay.
But anyway, so I don't know how many people knew this, but I took some time off of running. For a variety of different reasons. And then I started running again maybe about 3 months ago because my physician, my 2912 or 2910 or whatever you ran for the 10K, physician said, "How you feeling?" I said, "I feel pretty good." And he says, "Well, your blood pressure's a little high. I could put you on medication, but why don't we try running? How's that sound?" And I said, "Good." I said, "How often?" He said, "Probably 3 or 4 times a week." So I started doing that. I've been doing it for about 3 or 4 months, and as you can imagine, taking 6 months off of running and starting up again when you're over 60 sucks. It really is not that fun.
I did the same thing at 30.
And it still sucks.
Whew.
Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah.
But anyways, I get to the point where I actually started feeling pretty good until Sunday.
Yeah.
And I went for a run, and I couldn't figure out, one of those days you don't feel like getting out the door at all. Yeah. And you go, don't be a baby. Just get out the door. It's going to be fine. Well, it wasn't fine. It was horrible. There was a lot of walking involved, and all I kept saying was, man, you're dying. Man, you're dying. I feel like I'm dead out here, right? And then I get home, and about once a week, I'll look inside the mailbox to see what's going on, unless I'm expecting something from like eBay or, or Amazon that's been shipped by the U.S. Postal Service. But in this case, it hadn't. And the one piece of mail I have is from the Neptune Society.
Okay.
Do you know what the Neptune?
I have no idea. Please enlighten me.
So the Neptune Society, they're inviting me to come to an information clinic later that week, and what the Neptune Society is they'll cremate you and throw your ashes out to sea. So, which is kind of appropriate given how bad I felt in that run. Yeah. And they said, we've been around for almost as long as you've been alive. They're celebrating their 50th anniversary. So I've got them by good 11, 12 years. So anyways, that's, was the start of my Sunday. And, I found that worth a chuckle.
Yeah.
That I felt so bad. And I kept talking about how I was dying. And then the Neptune Society showed up. So anyways, how's your running going?
My running is actually going really well. I think when we talk about those long breaks and coming back, I didn't think I was going to get to the fitness I'm at right now so quickly. And it's a little scary because you're always going to be balancing that fine line of pushing too hard. I feel like right now I'm taking some risks because I'm seeing all this success, but it's all about also pulling back because we've got a long season ahead of us.
Yeah.
I have my main goal in December of the half marathon. Most of the athletes that we've been running with the Aggies also have that main goal in December, and it's a long season.
Yeah, and you have plenty of people to work out. I mean, we had a big group on Saturday. You had you, Michael, Phil, Silas, Mark.
And you're throwing these names around, but most of these guys are sub 14-minute 5K guys.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
A lot of strong women as well.
Doug.
Yeah. You still haven't figured out
his real name. I think is Craig, but
it's Craig.
I've started calling him Doug, and it just kind of stuck.
Yeah.
And then we got some new runners, and then we got Heather was out there, and Kira and Aaron and Courtney.
Again, you're throwing these names.
Oh yeah. Okay.
No one's going to know who these are, but
yeah.
If you actually look at the credentials of each of these names you've said, I mean, we've got national titles, record holders. These are legit runners.
Like Kira in high school was probably the best runner that's out there.
Yeah.
And Phil won the California High School State Meet in the mile when he was in high school.
Yes.
And he beat Centrowitz at Club Cross. Phil got third at Club Cross one year and outkicked Matt Centrowitz.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool. But Kira in high school won the California high school state meet title in the 1600 4 consecutive years.
Yeah.
And I believe it was her junior year, or senior year, she won Kinney or Foot Locker national cross country titles. And she was second in the state meet twice, I believe, in the 2 mile.
A lot of talent.
A lot of talent, yeah. And then she went to UCLA and ran for Bob Larson, and then went and got her PhD at Colorado and ran for Mark Wetmore. So she's run for some pretty good coaches until she got in our group, and I'm in charge of that one. So that went downhill from there.
Downgrade.
Yeah, exactly. But no, your Saturdays, your workouts look good.
Yeah, so we've started up. This was the first official week of Aggie training. We had the fartlek on Wednesday, and I will say going into that, maybe was a little beat up. We've been upping the mileage, upping the intensity just a little bit. And you'd said 3 minutes on, 1 minute off, with about 7 to 10 of them. And I think my goal was, okay, let's see what I can do, maybe up the intensity just a little bit. And when I went off, I felt good. And I think we hit the first couple efforts in about 5 minute mile pace. And very quickly I realized that's one step above where I should be right now. And I had to ease back a little bit. I think we got back into like the 5:20 mile range, which was much more in line. And I think I told you I wasn't feeling it today. But then when I went back and looked at the splits, I just went too fast. I was out of my comfort zone. And then we came back on Saturday for the mile repeats.
Basically, everyone did the same thing. 5 minutes on, 1 minute off.
Yes,
right.
Exactly.
Basically, it's supposed to be a roughly marathon effort.
Right.
Right.
And I didn't go with a lot of the guys.
No. And how much you ended up doing? 6 or?
I did 7 mile repeats, 5:34, 5:35. Felt very comfortable.
Good.
1 minute rest just to kind of let the heart rate get down a little bit. But
most people did at least 4, 4, 6, 7.
Yep.
I don't know what Mark and Silas did.
I think they did 8.
They did 8, yeah. So anyways, we're doing something a little bit different. We're doing fartleks, but it's based on time.
And it's not very serious right now. We're getting the effort in. We're just doing the work, but it's a long season.
Yeah.
So it's October now. How are you thinking as a coach with a lot of these guys' goal in December? Most people are starting training early in the summer, workouts by September. How do you maintain that long of a season?
Well, for the next 6 weeks or so, until basically the middle of November, it's controlled stuff within yourself, but a pretty high volume of stuff. And then the last month of the year will be more like traditional track stuff. So it'll be stuff like maybe 3x300. Pretty fast to get used to going out fast at nationals, and then maybe a tempo run in the middle, and then 300s at the end, or something along those lines.
And for me, someone whose goal race is in December, the half marathon, still pretty important to get some pace work done under half marathon goal pace.
Yeah, for sure. And then also when they're doing their tempo work, you would do a longer warm-up. It might be 6 mile warm up, and then jump in the tempo that's planned for the day. That sort of thing. So it's a little bit more volume, but when you get in the marathon, the training gets a lot more volume based.
Right.
Yeah.
And with your athletes, how important is it to have that goal race like nationals? For me, this half marathon, because before I was training, I just felt like I didn't really have a purpose of what I was going to do. And now that I've dialed in on this race, I feel like all my focus, all my intensity, and everything is kind of leading to this race, which is good in the sense that I'm real focused in. Maybe a little bad because if things don't go right, you feel like you have a lot on the line. But I think for the most part,
it's the way to go.
Yeah.
So one of the athletes I was talking to asked him what his goal was, and he said LA 28. And I said, "There's nothing between now and then." He said, "No." And I said, it might be helpful if you had some interim goals to show if your training is progressing the way you want it to. Yeah. And so he ran a cross country race last week, and I said, what might be a good idea is at the PA Championships, which are regional championships in the middle of November, compare your placing this weekend with how you place against the same runners there to see, because cross country times it's hard to compare that kind of stuff. So, anyways, having goal races, if you're a competitive runner, is a big deal.
Yeah,
I mean, it's got to be done.
And when you hear about me saying, I've made these pretty big jumps in a pretty quick amount of time, especially with the amount of time I took off from running, what's going through your head in terms of the risks of going too far too soon, because you can only make so much progress so soon.
Yeah, but you went for how many years of running? I mean, I know you took some time off.
Right.
But it's not like me. I mean, that mine is 40 years ago when I was doing that kind of stuff.
Right.
So my chance of breaking by increasing stuff is significantly greater. But you're still pretty close to training at a pretty high level. So getting back to where you were mileage-wise
isn't quite as hard.
No, it's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
Especially if you do stuff like take a break.
Yep.
You know, every year, take like a 2-week break.
Yep.
And there's these people that come back like with 10% increase off a really little mileage to get back to where they were.
Yep.
Well, it takes you 2 weeks to get back to where you were. Right? It doesn't feel good, but you can get there in 2 weeks.
Right.
Maybe like 60% of the mileage in week 1, and then 80% in week 2, and then 100% in week 3.
Right.
Because you're not that far away from it.
Right.
But again, it sucks. But
yes.
it gets done.
Yeah.
So some of the stuff that has come across my desk recently is 2 studies.
Okay.
One was provided by a friend of mine, Pat Devaney. Mm-hmm. And for those that know Pat, he used to be one of the higher ups at Reebok when they were really on the scene. Mm-hmm. So they had Pat, had Mike Finelli, they had Peanut Harms, they had Jim Van Dyne, and they had Angel Martinez, all part of Reebok. Yep. When Reebok became the top brand, they overtook Nike. And they were really big on competitive distance running. So that's when they had Ed Eyestone, Arturo Barrios, Steve Jones, Mark Conover. They had some really good and clubs and everything like that. They're very, very strong. But so anyways, Pat sent me this study. It is focused entirely on super spikes. And it was actually a pretty good study where they didn't let the athletes know which spikes they were wearing. They're comparing super spikes with traditional spikes. Long study that was just pretty boring. Yeah. But the takeaways, there's a couple takeaways. One is that on average, super spikes over traditional spikes will improve performance by roughly 2%.
Okay.
And for those that don't know what that means, a 4-minute mile is 240 seconds. Mm-hmm. So 2% of that is 4.8 seconds. Yeah. So those competitive milers thinking close to 5 seconds on a mile that fast is a significant amount of time.
Right.
2.5 seconds on an 800 for a U.S. level athlete is a big deal.
Right.
And that's what we're talking about with these spikes.
And the interesting part about that in particular is when you look at marathon down, we've seen pretty drastic time decreases across the board, and they're all pretty in line. But the 800 specifically, I don't know if Rudisha was just such an outlier, but we haven't been able to see.
No, but this year it went off the rails. It went crazy with 800.
And I also think, from what I read from this study, it does appear the longer you go, the more of an impact.
Benefit.
I mean, it's longer time, more efficiency. As you get down 100, 200, 400, 800, it's not quite as drastic. But from what I've seen, every event, it does seem to play somewhat of a factor.
It does. And, the improvement is in stride length.
Yep.
So it results in a 2% increase in stride length. The cadence stays the same. It doesn't improve your cadence at all. It's just you're going farther with each step. So, and it's super spikes because they're regulated in terms of the heights and so forth. They don't offer as much benefit as like road flats, which are more along the lines of 2 to 4% increase. So, if you are, I don't know what we did, like a 6-minute miler for a marathon, what's that come out to? 4% of that, 6 minutes is 360 seconds times 0.4 is 12 or 15 seconds a mile, which is pretty significant over the course of a marathon. Yeah. So they help a lot.
Yeah, and it's not all equal for each person, but regardless, and I think going back to the 800, when you talk about a lot of these athletes have just been popping off, what I've also noticed is each round, it used to be like the finals, but now every round is so strong.
Crazy.
And I think the athletes are able to recover quicker from these shoes. So that is helping a lot for rounds and just feeling fresh each race along the way.
Right. One of the guys I have lunch with, Stuart Jenkins, and when we were talking about the study, he mentioned something that was pretty interesting, and I don't know if there's any merit to it or not, but he golfs, and he said, my swing speed's pretty slow, so he uses a senior flex shaft, which is really whippy. versus a Pro, which has like an extra stiff shaft. So you got extra stiff, regular, senior, something along those lines. So it's a different flexibility based on how fast your swing speed is, which would make sense.
Right.
Someone who has a slow swing speed needs assistance, and someone who has fast swing speed doesn't need as much assistance.
Yeah.
They need actually something stiffer. So he was suggesting that maybe do the same thing in racing flats, where the plate is different depending on the speed you're running, because someone who's running a 4-minute mile is generating significantly more force on the ground than someone who's running a 7-minute mile.
Yeah, and I think there's always more room for options, customization, and brands are each day we see new shoes coming out. But I think we have that a little bit right now with, the Nike Dragonfly has a more flexible P-Bax plate. The Nike Victory has the carbon plate. So we are seeing different plates and stiffnesses to give people more options. But it would be interesting to see, like with a Dragonfly, if you could actually get it customized to your own needs.
To your own speed. But, in my mind, like some of Madison ran 250 in the marathon at Berlin.
And Madison is
one of our women.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it would make sense for me to think that the plate stiffness that Kipchoge wore to run 2 hours should be the same as Madison running 250.
Right.
It just doesn't seem like they should be the same.
No.
And regardless of the weight of the athlete, it's just how much force you're generating on the ground. Seems like there's an optimum stiffness of the plate. Yeah. And I haven't seen any studies on that, but I'm guessing, Rup's plate is specifically designed for the force he's generating.
Yeah.
Versus, somebody else like Hawker in the 1500. Yeah. He's going to be generating more force in that race.
Well, that was the big thing of the original Nike Sub 2, where Kipchoge was trying to break 2 hours. Yeah. The first one they did
was like 50 some odd mils and two plates.
Well, so that was the second one.
Okay.
We never got official confirmation of what was in the shoe, but the first one, each athlete had a custom Vaporfly Elite, and each one was tuned to their gait, to their cadence, and each athlete had a little bit different setup depending on how they ran. So I think that's one of the benefits of being a top-end athlete. You can get all the bells and whistles.
But it seems like there might be a place for like a racing flat for sub 5-minute pace.
Yeah. One
sub 6-minute pace. One sub 8-minute pace, and one above 8-minute pace.
Yeah.
So 6 to 8 minutes has this flex.
Yep.
8 and above has this flex.
Yeah.
And then sub 6, 5 to 6 has this, and sub 5 has this, something along those lines.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Potentially.
Exactly.
But again, even when you look at different pace ranges, people's gaits, foot strike, everything is so different.
But what I'm thinking is you start with one variable
and then get more custom along the way.
Yeah, exactly, because you can go completely overboard, and a lot of people don't. It's like the Somnio shoes that LaChance and Danny Orr had. For those that don't know about the Somnio shoes, we might have mentioned it in a previous podcast, but Somnio had this idea. It was a shoe company developed by a bunch of engineers from Specialized Bikes, and you could customize the cleats, the shoes, for Specialized with all these different kind of combinations. The problem is when you did it with running shoes, people didn't know what combination they needed, and it was like a tinker toy thing. Like there's just so many different pieces that people got confused.
Right.
So you can't go completely overboard with the whole thing.
Totally. And there's a lot of really good studies I feel like we've been hearing now on the AFT. And Joe, AFT, for people who don't know, Advanced Footwear Technology. This is the latest and greatest term for a super shoe. And that's where we
read it in this study, right? That's the first time I've read it.
I never heard of it either. I was wondering if there was a UFO flying around or something. No, AFT, Advanced Footwear Technology. This basically means super foam, some sort of stiffening agent built for peak performance in modern times.
Yeah, exactly. And durability doesn't play into that.
Not usually.
No. The second study it was kind of a funky study, but basically they were testing the pronation on super shoes.
Yeah.
The amount of pronation that the super shoes allow. And what they found was there was a significant increase in the amount of pronation allowed in the Vaporfly Next Percent.
Yes.
And when's that? Was that a 2019 shoe or 2020 shoe or something like that?
Yeah, Vaporfly Next Percent would have been around 2019.
Around that thing. And so they don't study exactly the ramifications of that, but they make the links of these other studies that point out that extreme overpronation, not the kind of pronation when you're walking barefoot on the ground, because that limits the amount of movement. This is something your foot is elevated on a really soft surface that doesn't provide any lateral support, or very little. And so whatever overpronation you have is exaggerated significantly. Yeah. So there's studies that indicate that, yes, if you allow your foot to be in that thing over time, that motion over time, it leads to increase in ankle stress fractures, particularly navicular stress fractures.
Yeah.
So, and then if you think about people racing in that environment, they're putting way more force onto their foot.
Oh yeah.
And it's gonna accentuate whatever imperfections you have in your gait. So I mean, theoretically, it makes sense.
It does,
but they don't have the connection. They use 12 runners. They've been running 6 months, 3 times a week.
Yeah.
They haven't been injured during that previous 6 months.
Yeah. Mostly were mid-foot to forefoot strikers.
Right. And they're just looking at the amount of overpronation.
And they compared the Vaporfly Next Percent with, I believe it was a Minimus 10 V2.
Yeah, which is a really low profile.
Very low profile.
Right. So that's not going to allow your foot to do anything but its natural pronation.
It would also be interesting to see this with a couple more factors. Obviously, more runners, more different types of runners would be nice, but also testing Vaporfly Next Percent. If you remember when that shoe came out, very narrow net bases to that shoe.
Yeah.
So some of the super shoes now have a lot wider net bases, a lot more inherently stable. We've learned more with plates and foams.
Yeah, the Asics super shoes are pretty wide.
And I would even say something, it would be curious, like the new Hoka Cielo X,
Yeah.
that very wide platform. Even in the Nike line, Alphafly, I think, would be a more inherently stable shoe than Vaporfly. So more to come there. I think right now we're at this part where everyone is starting to realize how important these shoes are and how much there is still to learn.
Right.
So we're going to see more studies, but it's hard to do them.
Yeah, it is. And the other thing, you're dealing with humans.
Yep.
And any long-term study, when you have humans, things come up. It's really difficult to do. But, if people are looking at, the best way to gain improvement, it's through training.
Yeah.
Now, the racing shoes, yes, they do help.
Yeah.
A 3 or 4 minute improvement in a marathon is great. But going back to the Madison example, she's been training with us for about 2 years. She came in, I want to say she was 308, 310, maybe 312 in the marathon. Yeah. Now she's down to 250.
Wow.
Over 2 years of training.
That's huge.
So I believe she was racing in super shoes then. Now, even if she wasn't, that it's about a 20-minute improvement in a marathon. Yeah. Which is pretty good over 2 years.
Right.
She's pretty excited about the whole thing.
Yeah.
I don't think she's walking real well right now because Berlin just happened, but yeah.
Well, and also we talked with Todd a little bit about testing shoes, especially later in a race. Puma's claiming that their foam is more resilient in mile 20 to mile 26. That's another thing that's really hard to test for, because how are you going to get testers to test your shoes for that long of a race? But I have one tester who I think would be very good at this, CJ Albertson.
That guy is on fire. I mean,
the Strava King.
Yeah. I don't know if he's Strava King, but he is. What did he do the other day?
So he did 24 miles at 4:56 pace, just a training run.
Yeah.
He was just out there, and he could have done another 2 miles and set a nice little marathon for the day, but definitely I would call him the Strava King right now. I'm starting to see this more and more with athletes that are doing very impressive Strava runs. CJ actually backs it up pretty well in races, but this is a common trend where people put a lot more street cred in the Strava than anything else.
Yeah, it's crazy. But one of the things that keeps popping up, in my readings is stuff on double threshold runs.
Oh, yes.
And most of the people that I'm reading that are doing them way too hard.
Yeah.
And I just reviewed Marius Bakken. He's the guy who came up with the Norwegian approach, which is, intervals, 1, 2, 3, up to 6 minute intervals with short recoveries, like 1 minute or less. But he's very specific about the amount of lactate in your body, and it's referred to as mmols or millimoles or something like that. So his recommendation is between 2 and 3 millimoles. So if you're trying to figure out what the heck that means, it's somewhere in between marathon pace at the fast end, and an 80% run. So figure 80% is whatever your pace is for your current 5K fitness. Divide that split, whatever the 400 meter split, by 0.8, and that'll give you the pace that you should be running. Okay. So, if you're, say, a 14 flat guy, that's probably at the fastest 520 pace, and up to 535, 540. And you're doing like 13 miles of that during the course of a day. Yeah. Now, that's the Norwegian approach. I was thinking about this on my run this morning. This run this morning was better than my Neptune Society run the other day. But, there's back in the 70s, there was the American system of doing this, which was you just hammered twice a day. And so 2 Marks I know did this effectively. One was Mark Nino. He lived in town with Leo.
Yes, the ghost.
Yes, well, we'll get to that in a second. But Leo used to work here, and he went to college. He went to Kentucky with Mark. And Mark came and lived with Leo for 10 weeks before Mark went to Brussels and ran the American record in the 10,000 meters. This is in the 90s. I think he ran 27:21. Something along those lines. But, back when there's no super shoes and everything, and that was pretty good. American record's decent. And what he did for 10 weeks here, and I know this because I just know Mark, and I, ask Leo and I ask Mark what he was doing. Well, it was pretty simple. 10 miles at lunch, hard. Mm-hmm. And he lived downtown. And for those that know San Luis Obispo, out Broad Street, past the airport, left on Biddle Ranch Road, left on Orchid, back over Johnson, back downtown, 10 miles. That was at lunch. In the evening, the same loop, hard. 6 days a week. 10 in the morning, 10 in the evening, and 10 o'clock at night. Monday through Saturday.
Wow.
On Sunday, he'd do 20 miles at Pismo Beach, hard. 10 miles out on Pismo Beach, which is really boring, and 10 miles back, which you can do there. And then you do drills and strides afterwards. But he was doing, I would think, somewhere in the neighborhood of 5:15 to 5:30 pace average on most of his runs.
Wow.
Which, given the fact he's a 27:20 guy, is about the same kind of thing as this Norwegian approach, except you're not taking the short recovery. You're just doing it as a straight run.
Yeah.
And the other guy I knew that did this was Mark Conover. Yeah. And Mark didn't run easy. And one summer, before his senior year at Humboldt State, he was working in Tahoe, and he would run 10 miles hard in the morning to his job, which was unloading rubber rafts out of the Truckee River and putting them up on the, to get them out of the river so they could put them on a truck and take them up the river again. And then 10 miles back home every night. And this at altitude, and he did it hard. And then on Sunday, he did 20 miles hard. So these guys are running definitely under 6-minute pace, closer to 5:30 and faster, 7 days a week. And so it's the same basic effect.
Right.
And if you know Linda Summers, she ran the 96 Olympics, qualified for 7 Olympic trials in the marathon. Mm-hmm. That's how she trained. Jill Boaz, who was running with us, she made the World Championships team. Mm-hmm. She didn't do intervals. She just ran fast every day. So there's certain people that just do that. And I would call that the American system of this type of training where you don't get too specific about, okay, I got to get my lactate this level. I'm just hammering twice a day, every day, till I race fast.
And fast is all relative because while 5:30 pace sounds fast to us, as a 27:20 guy, it's
just a run.
It's a run.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I just hearing that, I got to think, how are they recovering properly with that much?
Well, and like some of the people we're talking about, there was no nutrition involved.
No.
There was no sleep involved.
They lived fast, fun lifestyle.
Yeah, there was beer involved, and there's pizza involved, and there's mayonnaise involved, but there wasn't naps and things like that.
Right.
It was, you just hammered.
So maybe even a little bit more understanding of when we hear about some of the times people are running today, a lot of these athletes have access to everything from altitude, nutrition, all the good stuff that maybe some of these other athletes back in the day didn't have access to.
Yeah, and I think the fact that most of the people that we know that do these types of workouts where they're hammering twice a day are also incorporating things like quarters and halves and mile reps and faster tempo runs in conjunction with I don't even call it moderately paced, but they're, that was the idea behind our midweek long run. Yeah. Where it's like 14 or 16 miles, and the last half of it are at this kind of clip. Yep. So it's basically getting the same effect as one of these double threshold workouts. Yep. It just, it just packaged a little bit differently, but the net effect is the same.
So when we hear about these old runners who were doing this, that was one extreme of training. What would you say now, with the years of knowledge you have with training, what would be a good balance of, if you're interested in double threshold, but maybe you don't want to do it 7 days a week? That's too much for most people.
I actually would start with the midweek long run and maybe the last half of it.
Yep.
Do like 3 minutes on, 1 minute off,
right,
at this pace that you're thinking,
like
80% of your 5K pace, and just see how that goes. And then if it goes well, then think about doing the double day.
Okay.
But just going all in on doing this, twice a week, and then doing hill reps like Jakob does, might be a little bit too much.
Right.
Test it first to see how it goes, because not everyone responds to certain types of training.
Right. And I'm looking into adding in that midweek long run. Me and you both talked about that. And I think, because we decided there's two approaches to a midweek long run. Most runners have 2 structured workouts a week. We are on the Wednesday, Saturday schedule. Right. And it's like, where do you fit that midweek long run in to recover properly? And you either go before the workout or after the workout.
Yeah, I always went after, the day after.
Yeah.
Most of the guys now do it the day before.
Yeah.
But basically, block training, which is where you have a moderately hard workout one day and you come back and do another more intense. So on Saturdays, we have a pretty intense workout, long day,
right,
and then come back on Sunday with a long run.
Right.
So, I mean, it's a lot of running over the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably close to 40% of your miles are on 2 days over the weekend. But what you find is that when you do one of these harder workouts, you're not so sore the next day. You're really sore 2 days later.
Right.
So by putting block training in there, it actually is a benefit. Yeah. It sounds like it wouldn't work, but it does work. The other thing, too, is if you do your midweek long run the day before the Wednesday workout, most athletes will tend to run both of them a little bit easier, because you don't want to kill yourself on Tuesday and be dead on Wednesday.
Right.
So you do a little bit more moderate, and then you're a little bit tired from the day before, so you tend to do a little bit slower work on the Wednesday workout.
Right.
And the reason we go Wednesday, Saturday is because most of the people we have work full time. And so it's a lot easier to get in a full workout on Saturdays. The other thing is that, if you have people that like to go out on Friday nights, it makes it less less appealing if you have be a practice at 8 o'clock on Saturday morning.
Right.
So that was the other part of the whole thing.
Right.
And so there's some thinking involved there. So why don't you explain some of the upcoming videos we have coming up?
Well, we've been busy. We've been not too much travel recently. The travel's coming up in the next couple months, but we've been talking with some locals, and we talked about a lot of the local legends, the old timers, but we've got some new young guns coming up that are just killing it. One in particular, Davis Bove. If you follow the Cal Poly slow running scene, he hit the Olympic trials standard. He ran 3:35. He's just been crushing it. So we talked with him, and we got him some secret shoes. We can't discuss too much yet, but in the next couple of days, you'll see the official video with me and Davis testing out the Mizuno secret shoe. What I can say, it's the wildest shoe both of us had ever ran in. Crazy geometries, new foam compounds. Mizuno is on a tear right now, and I think maybe if you liked Mizuno back in the day, you might have found other options in the past 10 years. They are back making the craziest shoes.
Fantastic stuff. So them and Puma are probably making the two craziest stuff.
Yeah, they're making bold moves. And, Davis got it on, and again, he was like, I didn't even really know Mizuno was in this space, but he was really surprised. He called them the bouncy moon shoes. That's how he described them. So it was fun, and I think with Davis, the cool thing is he's a 335, 1500 guy. He's got the credibility, and he likes shoes. Yeah. We were going back and forth, talking different ideas, and I think he's probably going to be someone we keep bringing out to test shoes. So you can let us know once you see the video, but it should be fun.
Speaking of moon shoes.
What do we got there, Joe?
We have a Glycerin Max.
Yes.
And I just came back from going to the store and getting myself some mayonnaise for my sandwich at lunch, and these were sitting on my desk just about an hour ago. So I'm not going to be too skeptical. I'm going to go for a run later this week in these, and then I'll report back. But they are very tall.
Yes. Well, our buyer brought me a pair of those, and he had an extra pair. He said, what should I do with them? I said, I think Joe needs to upgrade his Brooks shoes. I'm in the same ballpark as you. It's a very interesting shoe.
Yeah, but it feels good walking around.
It feels soft.
Yeah.
It feels cushioned.
It's got a good rocker.
It has a very nice geometry. Yeah. I think the only disadvantage with this shoe,
the price.
The price point is a little high, $200. Yeah. If you like this style of shoe, I think it will be worth it. But it's not going to be a shoe for everyone because it's a little bulky. It's a lot of shoe, but
for a guy like me that walk jogs, it might work.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And with all the extra volume I'm putting on, I think it actually will fit in well with my lineup.
It'll be good.
Yeah.
And speaking of travel,
yes,
we have the running event coming up.
I know. It's getting closer each week.
Yeah. We have that next month. And then a couple of my jackass friends are going to NCAA meet. Division I cross country championships in Madison, Wisconsin. So I'm going directly from Austin, Texas to Madison, Wisconsin, and I'm meeting Dave Frank. And then we have Tim Hacker, who's won that race before for Wisconsin. He's a professor, I believe, at University of Wisconsin. His son runs for Northern Arizona.
Nice.
So, and then we have Doug Consiglio, who is featured in quite a bit of Malcolm Gladwell's writing.
Right.
Yes. And so because of him and another Canadian named Mark Olson, who broke 4 minutes in the mile when that was a thing in high school, I emailed Malcolm about going. And he emailed me back. He said, normally I would love to, but I'm on a book tour. And I'm thinking, what? I haven't heard about a book tour. And then today on my email, apparently he has a new book out. And I, for some reason, maybe because I called him or emailed him, I have this thing where he's got this book, and what the hell is it called? It's called Return of, what the heck was it? It was a Return of the Tipping Point or something like that.
Okay.
But anyways, I looked it up, and yes, in fact, he's going to be speaking in Miami, Florida, the day we were in Madison, Wisconsin. So he's not going on this trip, but it should be quite fun. I was speaking with Michael Stember. I don't know if you guys remember Michael. He's an Olympian in the 1500. Also one of the California high school state meet, heck of an 800-meter runner, ran for Stanford with Gabe Jennings. But anyways, he's quite the chef right now. And he says, I would love to come out and make you guys dinner. So he's going to come out and make us a dinner. So it should be pretty fun. Wow. So anyways, that's what I got going on for upcoming travel.
Yeah. Malcolm is an interesting guy. I need to do a little bit deeper dive in all of his readings, but from what I've read so far with the outliers, and it's just really
he's into running.
Yeah, he's really into running, and
he was good as a kid. Like I want to say he ran a 4:05 1500 when he was 14. Yeah. 13 or 14.
Right.
Which is, and I want to say, just as going off of memory, but I want to say he quit running when he was really, really good. Yeah. Like he was so good that he lapped Consiglio.
Right.
Back in high school.
Yep.
But anyways, once Malcolm got beat, I think when he was 15, he quit. Because he was the child prodigy, and he wasn't the child prodigy anymore. He was starting to get beat. So, anyways, he still ran pretty well.
He did, and he's still even nowadays as a masters runner. I always hear him trying to break sub-5. So he's a good runner, and I would love to hear some of his takes on a lot of different topics that we have. So maybe
we can get
we'll see if we can work that out
at some point. One thing we're not really going to go into that's been happening recently is all the fluff on the Wikipedia altering stuff.
The Wikigate.
Wikigate. So we'll leave that to other people, but just know that is on our radar. And
it is on our radar. We're following all the latest updates.
The latest and greatest
updates.
A
crazy story, and we could get into it, but at the same time, you can type it on Google. You'll get 100 stories. You can read it all.
Better stories than we can. I mean, the other thing too is I'm not really following it that close. So I wouldn't be the best person to talk about it. Just, in glancing, reading some of this stuff. But it seems kind of weird.
No.
But anyways.
I mean, here at the warehouse, we support all athletes.
Yes, we do.
So on the topic of, some of the crazy Let's Run stories we've been seeing this week, any good topics, any good questions from the internet?
Yeah. I have this one from the Cross Country Coaches Network on Facebook.
Okay.
And it's actually a serious question. It's from Matt Jewett. And I'll see if I can make this a little bit more concise, but question to the group. And I'm sure this might have been talked about in the past, so I'm sorry for in advance. Topic, having a team tempo race during the season. I am very much against this and would like to have opinions either way. My rationale is that runners always learn many things by racing, sometimes about themselves, course, competition, conditions, etc. These are very valuable in addition to pushing oneself to succeed beyond what they think they can do. Okay, so basically saying that by tempoing a race, you're not getting as much out of it as possible. So I do have a story about this that involves one Sarah Hall. So back when I was living with Mark Conover, our other roommate at the time was Pete Sweeney and his fiancee, Shannon Sweeney. They moved to Santa Rosa. The parents of Sarah Hall found out that she was available to coach, so convinced the school to hire her as a cross-country coach. So Shannon sat down with Sarah and said, what are your goals for this coming cross-country season? And Sarah's goals were 3. Number 1, first and foremost, was for the team to win the state championship, California High School State Championship. Number 2 was for her to win the individual state title. Number 3 was for her to win Kinney Nationals in cross-country. So with that being the goal, the team winning the state title, the first meet is a dual meet in Santa Rosa. So Sarah went to Montgomery High School, and the meet they're having that week, their first dual meet, is against Santa Rosa High School. And there's a runner there named Jenny Aldridge. Her dad, Danny, ran at Cal Poly, ran for Athletics West, had the school record in the 1500. And she was a heck of a runner, low 450s when she was a junior. So you had the 2 top high school studs going at it in a dual meet at the first meet of the season. Well, Shannon sat down with Sarah and said, if we're going to make our first goal, which is win the state title, you need to run with the 4, 5, 6, and 7 runners on our team and teach them how to race, because it's not an innate skill. You have to be taught how to race. And so that's what she did. She said, for first 2 miles, you're running with our 4, 5, 6, and 7. And one of those runners was Kim Conley, who became pretty good. She made the Olympic team in the 10,000 meters. Anyways, so that went on for the first half of the season until, I believe, Mount Sac, when Sarah was allowed to race on her own. But till that point, had to run with the team. So she's basically tempoing the thing. But there's a specific goal in mind, and I think that's the big thing is if you're a high school coach and you have 2 meets a week, and you're having these kids hammer each one of them, there's going to become a breaking point. There's going to become a point where you're not going to get much benefit from it. You might get hurt, and you're probably going to flame out towards the middle of the season. So, and not every meet deserves an all-out effort.
Yeah, and I see where this coach is coming from, because, you're always taught to give it your all, but you're setting these kids up for failure if you're racing them twice a week all season. And that comes back to our chat earlier of your goal race. What is your end goal? And if you've got a long season, you've got to make trade-offs of when you're going to push, when you're going to go off a little.
And so one of the guys who's actually going on this NCAA trip, I just texted him before this thing. He said, yeah, I'd love to go. Steve Boaz, who used to coach at San Luis High. Mm-hmm. And his philosophy was he wouldn't let his team wear racing flats until Mount Sac Invitational, which is the 3rd weekend in October. So up until that point, we're training. And then once Mount Sac comes around, we're wearing racing flats, and now we're racing, which is 2 different things. And that's about roughly, 5 weeks before the state meet?
Right.
So that was pretty good. But back to Sarah, they did end up winning the California High School State meet. Wow. She won the individual title. And then going into nationals, she was not favored, and she ended up kicking Anita Soraki and won the national title. Wow. So I think a lot of that has to do with the limited season. Mm-hmm. So it's more like, because California goes forever. So, she's not starting to race until the end of October. And then you have Foot Locker, which is the first weekend in December. Yep. So what's that, 6 weeks of hammering? And so she's just coming on in fitness, and she has all that background from the early fall. So I understand that this is just our opinion on tempoing stuff. But, oftentimes you'll have people start fast and tempo the last part, or tempo the first part of a race and then finish fast to work on different aspects of the race. And then towards the end of the season, you try to pull it all together. And you do it through workouts and a variety of different other things. But just going out and telling the kids to run hard each time, in my experience, it's difficult, because you're not setting up a specific goal, a specific thing to accomplish. It's just you need to pull it all together immediately, and not everyone has those skills. Unless you're that much better than everyone, you just run away from everyone.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, footwear.
Yeah.
You know, we've been talking about the brands that are doing well right now, the brands that maybe are slacking a little bit. The one brand that is coming in super hot right now, and we've seen not only what's coming out in the next few months, but even what's coming out 2 year down the road, is Adidas.
Yeah, Three Stripes is on fire right now.
So we've got a couple shoes, the Adios 9,
Yep.
the Adios Pro 4,
Right.
and the Evo SL. 3 really good new additions right now to the line. I think the one that excites me the most, it's tough because they're all great for different reasons. The Pro 4 for elite racing, the Adios 9 for a little bit lower, nimble to the ground.
Can you explain what the Adios 9 is for those that don't know?
So Adios 9 is going to be a new take on what the last couple versions of the Adios were. The last couple versions have been lower to the ground, simple racer.
No plate.
It had a shank at one point. Now it's just straight super foam, no shank or anything. And
closer to a traditional racing flat, but it has super foam.
It does.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, this is really going to be something that I think is going to be versatile and really good for training, intervals, tempos, something when you don't want to go the true carbon plated route. This is going to be a really good training tool. And then even for me, I ran my first cross country race a few weeks ago. This was the shoe that I wore, and it's just really good for not being as high stack, so it's more nimble. It can take those turns. It's got really nice grip on the bottom with the Continental rubber. This is going to be a shoe that I think is going to be a sleeper, and the price point. Fantastic.
What's it go for?
This is, I believe, $130. Don't quote me, $130 or $140. Let me double check this for the people.
But you know, I've mentioned this before, but that's the shoe that the model that Noah Lyles trains in.
Yes,
it makes a lot of sense.
It does,
because you're not getting the benefit of the plate. You're training. You're developing the strength of your lower legs.
Right.
And it's a fantastic shoe. I mean, how much is it?
$140.
Okay, so $140 for super foam.
Yeah.
On that is, and for those that are lamenting the fact about not having traditional racing flats, that's a pretty good way to attack that problem.
Right.
Yeah.
And then if you want the true super shoe, of course you've got the Adios Pro 4.
Right.
We've seen it. There was a little controversy with this shoe that we can discuss right now.
Yeah, we should.
And that's the foam that's in this shoe. So Adios Pro has always been known for the Light Strike Pro compound. Fantastic compound, super high rebound, very lightweight. We had talked with Patrick Nava from Adidas, who had told us a very early version of this shoe was going to feature a thin layer of the same foam we saw in the Evo 1. When we got this final production version, it has been said that it's not actually the Evo 1 foam. It's a slightly different foam. It's not the same as the Light Strike on top, but they have altered the foam just from a durability standpoint. It was a little bit more durable, still getting basically the same rebound. So from what I've heard, the testing between this shoe and the early prototype, this shoe is doing just as good.
Yeah, it's still a great shoe. It's just a little bit different foam.
It's just a little bit different.
Just letting people know that it doesn't have the Evo 1 layer in there. And then we do have this guy is very exciting right here.
So the final one, the Evo SL, this kind of snuck up on us.
It's really cool. I mean, if you want something to consider alongside a Rebel or a Mach 6 or even an Endorphin Speed, look at this. This thing is fantastic.
And to just the nice little cherry on top, $150. So we've got full Light Strike Pro. We've got a dog bone in the midfoot just for a little bit of stability, Continental rubber. I mean, this shoe is going to be able to do it all.
Yeah.
Workouts. Some people might want to race in it. Some people might daily train in it. It's just a fun, lightweight shoe at a fantastic price point.
Right. We're predicting this is we'll sell every single one we bring in. It's a fantastic shoe.
Yeah. We won't have enough of these to go around, but hopefully Adidas will get the memo and start making these
because they have a home run in their hands.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if they realize it.
I think when you bring up Rebel, Mach, a lot of those, it's very in line because of the...
but this has a better foam than those.
Yes.
Yes.
So and that's where I'd say you can include the Endorphin Speed 3 in the memo, because even though the Endorphin Speed 3 does have a full nylon plate, the Endorphin Speed 3 is the only shoe on the market right now that has the true racing super foam in it. Even the Rebel has a PIBA blend.
Right.
So this also is going to have the true racing foam, but it doesn't have the plate, so it is going to be a little bit more versatile.
Right. And you said it was $150?
$150.
Okay.
So $20 cheaper than the Endorphin Speed 3.
Yeah. It's a great value.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And then, so that's current day shoes.
Right. To keep us grounded.
Yeah. I think we'll go back again. This week we got Connor's shoe closet. We're going back to the archives.
Yes.
And what I pulled out was a circa 2007, 2008 Asics Piranha.
That thing was wicked when that thing came out.
This was the SP2, the version 2, and feeling it in hand. I mean, feel that. That's 4.3 ounces. At the time, I was in high school, and all I wanted was the lightest weight shoe
And that's
possible.
what you got with this one.
That's what I got.
Until the Universe came out.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And when you look at this shoe,
there's nothing to it.
There's nothing. There's a very thin layer of So Light EVA, a little bit of rubber. This shoe at the time was crazy. And I actually, funny story with this, I was back home for a turkey trot maybe 5 years ago. I forgot my shoes at home. So I had nothing to wear. I was going through the storage, just trying to find something. I found these tucked away. They'd been sitting for over 10 years. I ran in them. They actually still run really well. They stayed intact. And it was actually fun to get in a more nimble shoe. The course I was running on had some tight turns. So
yeah, they're fun to run in.
I think it goes to show, even though we've improved in technology, the old school shoes can still hold their own.
They're still definitely fun. It's just, they don't offer as much protection.
Yeah.
Performance isn't as good, but they're still fun.
Yeah.
Like I have that old Austin Healey, and that thing's slow, but it's fun.
Right.
It's no windshield wipers, no heater, and things like that. But,
yeah,
it's fun to take every once in a while. Same with this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot more to come. I guess TRE is really the next big thing we have for us. Is there anything else on deck
Not
for
really.
you?
I'm going out to lunch with Jean-Luc and Jeff Gray and Stuart Jenkins in a few weeks.
Okay.
So get that. And then we start seeing product.
Yes. It's that time of the year.
Yes. We will see, starting in about 2 weeks, we start seeing a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
A lot.
So a lot of good product to come. I think with Jean-Luc and Jeff Gray, we might need to dive a little bit more into those studies. Those are the guys that would actually be able to give some real science behind what we've been reading.
Right.
So
right. They have some pretty interesting information.
Yeah.
And I mentioned this before, but we talk about stuff that maybe only 5 people in the United States really care about, but whatever. We have a good time talking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll report back and see what we have.
Perfect.
Cool.
A lot more to come.
Exactly. And what do we need to do?
You got to like,
comment, and subscribe.
You got it, Joe.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Joe.
Okay. Till next time. Peace out.